Hello, Exiles! This league I happened to notice that Fatal Flourish jewels were relatively cheap, so I impulse bought a pair for around 20 divines each and started thinking about what to do with them. So if you don't know, Fatal Flourish makes non-travel attack skills repeat once, and the final repeat deals 60% more damage. It's kind of like a mini multi-strike, but with no attack speed. But more importantly, it's not limited to melee skills. You can use it with bows, wands, and in particular, traps and mines. This is by far the strongest use case because instead of locking you down for the repeat, the proxy repeats, triggering again based on attack speed. Basically, it's effectively double damage, or actually 160% more because of the multiplier, all for 2 jewels. I considered a lot of trap and mine setups for my main skill and settled on Ice Shot of Penetration. Honestly, there isn't much competition for bow mines other than Burning Arrow, and Ice Shot is just a strong skill with overlap potential. What I think is more interesting is the defensive scaling of the build. I didn't want to play another glass cannon bow build, so I tried to build pretty tanky. And since Fatal Flourish locks us into Duelist, we have 3 main ways to get tanky. Gladiator Lucky Block, Champ Fortify, and Slayer Endurance Charges. Since it's a bow build, there's no realistic way to get block unless you go like Widowhail Rearguard, but that's not a real option. Slayer Frenzy Endurance stacking is nice, but you can already get a similar effect from Replica Badge of the Brotherhood, which also gives max Fortify per endurance charge for a big synergy with Champ Fortify. Champion also gets Adrenaline for extra move speed, which is very nice on a bow build, and so that's what I went with. I end up with 12 Frenzy and Endurance charges, 35 Perma Fortify, Capped Suppress, plus off-screening and freezing most enemies. The weakest link in the defenses is Recovery. I have just a bit of regen and kind of inconsistent leech and life gain on hit from my Mana Forge setup. I do have 5 instant life flasks, which also give rage, but I don't really have the muscle memory to use them. It's only a problem if you get swarmed though, which is rare, and the build is generally quite comfortable to pilot thanks to Mine's auto-targeting. Overall, the build is capable of most content. I've been doing Resonant Cascade breaches with relative ease, and I've also done some T17 boss rush. The price to performance isn't great though. I spent probably 400 or 500 divines on the build. Half of that was a synth frenzy ring, but yeah, this is definitely more of a showcase than a guide. As usual, PoE is in the description, but I'll go over it now. Okay, here we are, level 97 champion with Fatal Flourish. So for mine's PoE doesn't calculate it completely correctly. It does average out the 60 more to 30% more, but it thinks the mine repeats, so it cuts the mana cost in half, but it doesn't actually double the damage. So I've accounted for that with just a 2 times full DPS multiplier. The real DPS feels anywhere from 20 to 40 million. I'm not sure exactly because, mines with detonation chains and detonation speed, it's hard to get an exact DPS number, but that's roughly what it feels like. My ascendancy, obviously Fortify and Adrenaline, and then I'm taking Taunt to solve accuracy. And then last point is +1 ring slot, because I'm using Screams of the Desiccated, Resonating Shrine for +1 max charge, and also solves my endurance charge generation. And I grabbed a double with replenishing to give me a little bit of life regen. You can see about 400. It's not much, but it's better than nothing. Other than that, my only recovery, as I mentioned earlier, is this Mana Forge arrow setup, Blast Rain, Rain of Arrows, and Snaring Arrows with life gain on hit, and also this bit of leech here. Doesn't work for mines, but it does work for the Mana Forge setup. Onto the gear. Yeah, as I mentioned, like half my budget was just this ring base. I think there's still like 250 divines. Kind of a subtle craft on it with a Calandra's Touch. Third ring is just, well, it's still pretty good, but more basic. Life res, bit of multi, and bit of damage. The other big chunk of the budget went into this bow. So I wanted to do a fizz bow with Hatred because, it's been a while since the Hatred nerf. It's kind of fallen out of grace, but it's still pretty good. It's still viable. So I did a fizz bow. Ideally, it would be a Harbinger bow base because that's the best fizz bow and you don't care about attack speed. But the thing is, crafting a Fizzbow from scratch is painful. I didn't want to do it, and nobody else is doing it, so I just bought a spine bow. So yeah, I bought this bow with triple T1 prefixes and the enchant as is, and then I finished the suffixes. What you do, you have to make sure you start with a non-fractured, non-influenced base, and then you clean suffixes, you craft cannot roll attack mods, and you use a Shaper Exalt. That first Exalt is your best chance to hit +1 Frenzy, but if you don't hit it, you just use regular Exalts and Annuls until you do hit it, making sure to recraft the meta mod, cannot roll attack mods, if you annul it off. That way your prefixes are safe, and you have roughly a 1 in 40 chance on each Exalt to hit max Frenzy. And then if you want to go a step further, you annul off the other suffix, you do multi-mod, prefixes can't be changed, in Veiled Orb. Pray to God you don't delete the Frenzy and then unveil something good. That's what I did, and it was not worth it. I spent like 80 divines for the base, and then I spent another like 100 divines getting the suffixes done. So yeah, I don't recommend it. But that's the bow. Pretty nice bow. For the quiver, it is damage, life, fizz as extra cold for the third prefix. And then for the suffixes, I just went crit and crit multi. So the way you usually craft bows is you get 2 good attack suffixes, and then you craft cannot roll attack mods and slam for life and damage with bow skills. You can also do that with this because Fizz as extra cold is not an attack mod. And so usually you would do like crit multi +1 arrow, but since Ice Shot of Penetration can only fire 1 arrow, I just did crit chance because it's a cheap essence. And then I hit just decent tiers of the 3 prefixes and crafted res. Other gear is pretty basic, life and res. Foulborn Dark Rays has accuracy per frenzy. Even though I am solving accuracy with the taunt, having a little bit of accuracy scaling is really nice for clear. And of course, the goat replica badge accounts for like more than half of my defenses. You can go through the rest of the tree. So I go down here, I get the charge, and I get these damage per charge nodes, which are very good. The mastery, I took charge duration. Even though the damage per charge is very high value on paper, in practice, it's very easy for charges to fall off, especially my endurance charge generation, because it's only like 20% on hit from resonating, and I rely on the Maniforge setup for that, which doesn't work. Like it only triggers on enemies if they're on screen, otherwise it'll just shoot directly down on you. So yeah, having a bit of charge duration makes things a lot more comfortable. And then, oh yeah, I have tattooed Chill and Freeze Avoid. Also have Light of Meaning for cold damage. I also took the tattoo for rage when you use a life flask. There's not many other ways to get rage generation as a bow build, so this is pretty nice. Even though it is inconsistent, you pretty much just spam the life flasks when there's a tanky rare or a boss. And then this Lethal Pride is actually very high value. So it has some strength, +1 fortify, double damage, +1 fortify, double damage, life, +1 fortify. So a bit of life, 10 double damage, and 3 max fortify on this jewel. And it was pretty cheap, so very nice for this build. Nice little cluster here. I only take Prismatic Heart and Blanketed Snow for the best value. And then my Forbidden Flesh and Flame for Fatal Flourish. One of these has gotten really expensive since I've started the build. It's like 100 divines now, which is a little unfortunate. That's my other jewels. Well, there's really just the Watcher's Eye. Just a base crit hatred. Right, I did want to say, so I'm at 12 max frenzies. You can get to 14. Easiest way would be to replace the third ring with another synth frenzy ring, but I don't have another 250 divines, so I'm not doing that. And then the other way would be to, instead of using synthesis implicit frenzy charge gloves, you would craft it on a warlord base, where you have a +1 frenzy prefix, and then you would double corrupt for a roughly 1 in 40 chance to hit +1 frenzy. But that is insane. So yeah, again, I'm not doing that. But it would be extremely strong because, for example, if we hover this +1 frenzy, it's 20% more damage and roughly 10% more max hit. So yeah, every frenzy is extremely strong. And my gem links: Sniper's Mark, Enhanced Detonate Mines Automation. The Enhance is nice because it gives that extra bit of cooldown recovery rate that you want for Detonate Mines. My auras are Hail to Purity, Skitterbots, and Hatred. Fairly self-explanatory. Maniforge setup, I already went over that. I do have a weapon swap Enduring Cry in a Red Blade banner. This is just to set up my endurance charges before like a boss fight or something. Frostblink and Corrupting Fever to proc Champion Adrenaline, right? You just level this enough with the right links so that it costs a bit over half of your life, and then whenever Adrenaline falls off, you tap that. And my main links: Ice Shot, Penetration, High Impact Mine, Charged Mines, Cold Pen, Minefield, Vicious Proj. And then I got an Imbue for Power Charge on crit. I have 5 Power Charges, so that's a nice little 20% more damage. I think I would rather have an increased crit infusion, because that would mean I can solve crit and I can replace my Watcher's Eye with a crit multi-jewel or something, and that would be slightly more DPS overall. Other than that, as for Ice Shot penetration mechanics, I'm not too sure about how it works. Apparently, with enough quality, the AoEs can overlap on the same target or something. And then what you can also do is get like a cast on crit tornado in the Maniforge setup, and then it can like pierce or chain off the tornado and like the AoEs overlap or something. I tried it, and like I tried some single target tests on some bosses. I didn't really notice a difference. I don't know if I was doing something wrong or what, but yeah, I mean, the damage feels fine anyway, so I didn't really bother investigating further. Also, yeah, I am aware Ice Shot penetration is usually run with Fury Valve to get splits for better clear. Honestly, the clear felt fine with just Pierce, so I didn't bother changing it. Maybe it's because I get a bit of extra AoE from endurance charges from here. But yeah, I never found any issues with clearing. Yeah, the only other thing I wanted to say was, yeah, Restless Ward would be a nice option to have. Gives a lot of regen and a lot of move speed, which would feel really nice. But I would have to cut a rare body armor, so I'd lose some life. I'd have to recraft a bunch of stuff to res cap, and I would also not be able to suppress cap. Or, well, I guess I'd just have to spend more points on the tree to suppress cap. Which, honestly, in the end is probably optimal, but I don't really feel like it. So that's the build. I hope you found it interesting. If you did, like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. This is probably going to be my last build for the league because I'm going to be traveling for a while, but whatever happens next, you'll see it here. Thanks for watching.